say. I hope you don't take it wrong.
What's up, all you hitchhikers? Mikey and Bub here for another episode of the Strange Road Detours.
Hello.
This week, we have another good one for you. We're going to be covering the Ohio Grassman and friends, other weird cryptids here from our state of Ohio. And, Bub, we got a good one today.
Yeah. This is like, what we like to dabble in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun that we're dabbling in it a little more. And one of the kind of common themes that I think of is that, strange creatures aren't anything new. We hear about them, they're made mention of in different articles or cited. It's tough to say whether some of them are true or not, but it doesn't mean that people aren't seeing something in a certain respect. But, just imagine if you were the person to spot something that was, previously unseen or unknown. How do you grapple with that? How does your mind digest that? I mean, some people see a shooting star and they've never seen one before. They don't know what they're seeing. There's all kinds of occurrences like that are very easily mistaken or just kind of misconstrued.
Yeah, and people's memories are horrible too.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it.
Yeah.
The people that have seen certain things, in your mind, you have a memory of a memory. So
right.
Firsthand accounts get kind of weird, but with this, you have such a volume of sightings of these type of creatures here in Ohio, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Many different variations and names, even regionally here, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the really kind of wild parts of it is how it ties in. You hear one instance here in Ohio, and I'll use here as a vague example. Just think of the center, and here is somewhere from there. But you hear these different stories spread around the state, but they all bear a lot of the same similarities.
Yeah.
There's, some pretty reliable witnesses.
Yeah. Police officers.
Let's make one little side note, too. This is before there's a lot of widespread communication other than publication. Right.
Newspapers,
maybe
and reporters. A news article on the local news.
Right. So a very different style of presenting too. Today, it's you've got to sift through quite a bit.
Yeah, there's so much,
and even then, it's really tough to figure out what you're looking at sometimes. Mm-hmm. But that's what we're talking about today too, though, is we're talking about specific sightings, reliable people, and they're not seeing, it's a big bird or a bigger than normal fish, something like that. I mean, they're seeing something completely unexplainable, yet, there it is right in front of them. They scream at it, it goes away. There's physical evidence in the ground. Some of the cryptids we're going to be looking at today have some interesting names as well. And one of the first creatures we're going to talk about is the Ohio Grassman. We're also going to be talking about the Minerva Monster, the Cedar Bog Monster, and just kind of think of them like relatives, if you will. And then we're also going to talk about kind of an interesting one. I don't know what to make of it yet. I mean, kind of new to the lore of the Loveland Frogman. But, hey.
And just a note, as we were kind of digging into this, we realized that the Ohio Grassman, in a lot of ways, is sort of like a umbrella term for our Bigfoot here. And so the Minerva Monster, the Cedar Bog Monster, these are Bigfoot. They're Sasquatch.
Right.
All the descriptions are similar, 6 to 10 feet tall in some cases, varied colors and so forth, which we'll get into all that. And then the Loveland Frogman.
It's not easy to say.
It's kind of its own weird thing. And if you haven't been to Loveland, Ohio, it's beautiful. It's along the Little Miami River. We'll get there.
I don't think I've ever been there, but I'm going to have to look at it. It's a beautiful
area. It wouldn't surprise me if there was a huge frog living somewhere in some river ravine. It's an interesting place. So
you got me there. I'm interested in just that sentence. Let's get at it.
So let's lay the foundation of kind of where a lot of these sightings happen. So there's a certain area here in Ohio that's known as the Grassman Triangle. There's a guy named Don Keating that kind of coined the term the Sasquatch Triangle. And we'll get into Don a little bit later too. So basically it's this area that it covers a few counties here in Ohio. It's on the sort of the south eastern and northeastern area of Ohio, which is heavily forested, a lot of lakes, a lot of rivers.
Good place to be.
Yeah, small towns, fairly rural. And so it's quick note, Ohio is second after the American Northwest area of Oregon and Washington State and Northern California. So in sightings, Ohio is second after, is really fourth behind those two states. Yeah. So there's a ton of sightings here in Ohio, and we actually have the most Bigfoot researchers of any state as well here in Ohio.
There we go.
So there's so many sightings that you see a lot of researchers sort of in this small area, and the triangle where these guys do a lot of their work is in Coshocton County near Coshocton, and it's Conesville area is where a lot of some famous sightings actually, and Muskingum County, Tuscarawas, am I butchering that? Tuscarawas County, which is town near a town called is in the county, this town Newcomers Town, and another one is Guernsey County, which is where this Salt Fork State Park. So there's a lot of sightings around the Salt Fork State Park. It's I think the largest state park we have here in Ohio, and it's just north of Cambridge. And there they have several areas within that park. One's called Morgan's Knob, Parker's Road, which they call the Buckeye Trail, and then Bigfoot Ridge. So in this Salt Fork State Park, they have a lodge there, and in the lodge they have this giant carving of a huge wood carving of a Sasquatch. So the local area,
like purported life size.
It's pretty huge. Yeah, I saw a man with his kid next to it, and it was a big one. But it was really cool. So the community around these areas have really embraced, well, at least in the Salt Fork State Park area, Cambridge.
Right.
You can find that on the visitor's guide to the Guernsey? Yes.
Guernsey.
Yeah, Guernsey County.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
And so it's in 2012, the Salt Fork State Park was named one of the U.S. top 10 squatchiest places in America. So that's something to note there. It also has held several Bigfoot conferences over the years. And one of those conferences it was called the Annual Bigfoot Conference, and which I think later became the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. This guy, Don Keating, he started the Annual Bigfoot Conference in, I believe, 1989.
Wow.
And then they moved it to Salt Fork in 2005. And then he kind of handed the baton off to Mark DeWorth, and he's been running it ever since. And I believe now it's called the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. And that's something here, the Strange Crew. We got to get to that.
I was about to say, is this annual?
It was it was May 2nd. I believe it's been moved to August
COVID.
12th, 14th, something like that. We'll have to fact check that. I'd love to give a shout out to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. If you have anything going on in August, go check that out.
Yeah.
And the Salt Fork National State Park is beautiful from what I've heard. And I've been in and around that area of Cambridge, and it's gorgeous out there.
Now you're recoining the term squatchy.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
It's a squatchy. It's fairly squatchy.
So the squatch, he likes the beauty too.
So one thing about this area is just the habitat. So it's the hills of the Appalachian Plateau.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of lakes, rivers, streams, deep ravines.
You have terrain that kind of, let's use the metaphor of people in the water trying to swim.
Right.
Would be the equivalent to if a squatch was chasing you, or if a squatch lived in this terrain, it could go across it like a 4-wheel drive.
It gets
bulldozer.
And, people fly over state, Ohio. And
right.
so people don't really know, the real terrain of Ohio mostly is covered in forests and woods, and is most of the population is in Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And but the eastern part of Ohio is just beautiful. Forests, streams, so many state parks, wildlife. There's a population of deer. There's just deer everywhere out there. So if there was something out there, according to some people, there is the habitat to support a creature.
Absolutely.
Potentially. And who knows? So we talked a little bit about already. We mentioned Don Keating, and he's an interesting guy. And Don, if this finds you, we would love to reach out to you at some point and get you on the show.
Absolutely.
He wrote a book. He self-published a book called The Sasquatch Triangle, and then I believe it was republished in 2001, and it's The Sasquatch Triangle Revisited. And I can't seem to find that anywhere for sale. I definitely was looking to purchase that before the episode, and I just can't find it.
No
anywhere.
digital?
Just could not find it. If anybody's got the hookup on that, let us know.
Library?
Yeah, I guess it's like 84 pages. He's got some drawings in there, some reports early on when he kind of came into the fold in Newcomerstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
And he started getting into it, I think in the early 80s. And then in 1984, he saw an article that was written in this Newcomerstown newspaper.
Okay.
And then he just decided to go ahead and head to Newcomerstown and started connecting with people there.
A lot like John Keel going down to see the Mothman, just this little tug or pull of inspiration, if
absolutely.
you will. Okay.
And so Don was also on the History Channel show Monster Quest, which we'll get into that.
Okay.
And so he started the Eastern Ohio Bigfoot Investigations Organization.
Right.
So he's been at this for quite a while. In 1985, he started having meetings in Newcomerstown and asking people if they had seen anything, seen some strange creatures, and people started coming forward. And this meeting was picked up by regional newspapers and also the AP.
So how big did it start? Like size of gatherings, maybe?
Like a town hall.
Okay.
And put it out there, and it got around the community. Hey,
this is word of mouth, too.
If you've seen anything, and I don't know if they posted in the newspaper.
I mean, I would find that.
Don't get mad at me if I got that wrong, but it's...
Could have been. Put up a marquee sign somewhere. Yeah,
so I'm not sure how he got everybody to come to this meeting, but eventually he started kind of becoming the guy. And even now, if you have a sighting, he's kind of one of those guys that you go to and report your sighting to, and he's...
Seems kind of like a lightning rod of that realm.
Yeah, and we have a lot of really, really intelligent, very smart guys that are researching Sasquatch here in Ohio. Don's just one of them.
Right.
There's, like I said earlier, we have a whole lot of these investigators, and a lot of them go and talk at these conferences that are held out at Salt Fork. So
we got to go check out some of those.
Man, we definitely, I remember that coming on the radar last year.
Yeah.
But we had a shoot or something popped up, me and Stone and TJ, and we were talking about, hey, let's go to this Bigfoot conference.
I mean, think about how many people are actually really into it that you maybe only hear 1% like ourselves talking about something like this. I mean, not saying that's not being talked about on other, media and things like that. I'm sure a lot of different people have. I mean, there's a whole podcast dedicated just to Sasquatch. We're doing a detour to it, but I mean, so there's a strong community.
Oh yeah.
But imagine if you started going to some of those and actually hearing from people who maybe normally don't talk out about it too.
Right.
I think that would be there's got to be a decent amount of skepticism of wanting to come out and say something.
Now that you say that, I want to let people know, if you have had a sighting and you would like to share it with us, hit us up, DM us at The Strange Road.
Yes.
On Instagram, hit us up on Facebook, and we'd love to, get your story out there.
Yeah.
If you were willing to talk,
We like to talk, but we also like to listen.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to conference someone in and share their story on the show.
Yeah.
That could be, on the Primary Strange Road podcasts. Maybe that's something we could explore on there. But again, if anybody's had any of these sightings in Southeast Ohio, Eastern Ohio, hit us up. We want to hear from
Ohio,
you. We want to hear
Urbana.
from. Yeah, we'll get into that. That's the boggy,
all around.
the Bog Creek Monster, which is near Urbana and Bell Fountain. Was
amazingly
some things happening there. So there's a lot of other areas too with Bigfoot sightings, like Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Minerva. So in Minerva, that's where the Minerva Monster, and we'll really dive into that quite a bit.
Yeah.
That was started in 1978.
Yeah,
and
the
then
Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
Mhm.
That I've been there. I don't know how many times. My wife would know, but I've hiked it quite a few, and it is.
Yeah,
it's out. I mean, it's a nice park. It's not paved trails, this that. I'm sure they're
Right.
there, but the one we were on, we were in between like two cut walls of a stone that then had like glyphs on it or like engravings.
Wow.
From I don't know when, but yeah,
petroglyphs.
yeah. But I mean, that was just like one random day of hiking. If you actually spent time and searched for those, little secret spots or like the places.
That's
everybody knows the spots.
That's my buddy Chris's like special place. He's from Parma.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's he.
That's the park.
Yep, that's it.
Nice. And then from there we went to Minerva.
Yeah, so Minerva, and then like we mentioned earlier, Newcomers Town.
Yeah.
That's where I believe that's where this sighting of a 9 to 10 foot tall white Sasquatch was
Seems like that'd be
reported,
hard to hide.
And I believe it was a police officer also that reported that.
That gives credence.
And I guess he could tell from the size of it because it was standing next to a stop sign. And so he was almost a foot taller than the stop sign. And so I believe that was one of the early sightings that Don Keating ended up getting that story from somebody.
Huh.
So you have the Cedar Bog Monster, which we talked about, all over Northeast Ohio. In Southern Ohio as well, Wayne National Forest, another big forest.
That's Squatch Haven.
Oh, yeah. A lot of sightings from the 1800s and early 1900s were in northeastern Ohio, I guess. More like the Sandusky area. And then, I think...
Big body of water.
Yeah. And that's marshland up there.
Right.
So that's all fish,
Bigfoot's
game.
bathtub.
Exactly. Oh, man. And so, as the cities, Cleveland and all these kind of suburbs start pushing out into the wilderness and the suburbs and strip malls and everything else kind of takes over,
right?
You sort of start seeing the sighting shift from the northeastern part of the state to now, which is Minerva, Coshocton, Urbana.
All down the Little Miami River?
Well, the Little Miami is the Frogman.
What was it wasn't the Miami River. It was another one. It's the one that runs from Bell Fountain to Dayton. I can't remember if it's the Erie.
That might be the Little Miami River. That's
something
a big river.
of that nature. But just with the water flow, that too. Look where if it is being pushed from one area to the next, you're looking for resources. You need that water.
Exactly, and
big one.
Rivers and streams, and the ones in the Minerva, which we'll get into that, but it's like in the strip mine area.
Yeah.
So it's like an abandoned strip mine, and there's water in there, so people fish. There's people that have been kind of hanging out, like kids, and then just get pebbles or rocks start getting thrown at them when they're in this area.
Right.
And so there's a lot of, again, water, forest water.
Yeah.
It's in these areas really where no people are all that much.
Right.
So, so let's get into some of the history.
Okay.
Of the Grassman or the Minerva Monster, the Bigfoot of Ohio. And it's also found in western Pennsylvania, Kentucky. There's sightings, West Virginia, and so in the 1700s, it was documented. Some of the indigenous tribes talked about the Grassman and spoke about a race of bipedal ape men, is how they described them, and referred to them as wild ones of the woods. Okay,
I like that term.
And they lived nearby, and they claimed their stories that they would leave food out for them, and in an effort to sort of keep the peace. So they kind of had this relationship with them instead of, now
offering
modern
give
days.
to it.
One of the issues with when the Minerva Monster and some of those stories started coming out is you had all these dudes running down there with shotguns.
Right. You're not bringing it,
I'm going to get headlines on
bushel apples,
on the New York Times, and I'm going to make myself famous.
People still want to make a rug out of squatch.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it's clearly shows signs of being a conscious being, not just an animal. That it shows intelligence. So,
right.
It's it's a little strange.
The argument on that, right? Just to be able to prove it, it's like either you have to get the Jack Link's beef jerky to get Squatch into the lab,
trap him live,
just
or
so
you're going to shoot him.
Right.
And
so
I got the evidence. Bigfoot's real.
Right. Now that you've turned it into a prize-winning tournament, old Squatch, he's got to be more careful than ever out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting difference that you bring up between the way that it was broached, 150 years ago to now.
Yeah. Because sightings were the first of not Native Americans, but colonial people moving from the East Coast through the Ohio Territory. That dates back 150 years.
Right.
And the first sighting was in 1869.
But let's presuppose then that there were sightings by the indigenous for
they had
a long time.
It was just like, hey, that's the guy in the woods. That was just their neighbor, essentially.
Just maybe fully integrated into their everyday kind of like mindset rather than a phenomena. It was like a known obscure encounter.
And what's sad is these indigenous accounts of all these strange animals, whether it's the skinwalkers or Bigfoot or the Thunderbird, to them, these are real animals.
Sure.
This is not mythology.
No.
This is not a legend for them. This is like saying, the local university saying Bigfoot's not real, and the Native American populations are saying, hey, we've known about the Yowie and the Sasquatch and all these variations all through America. I think the only state that doesn't have a Bigfoot sighting is Hawaii. So you have 49 states where
pretty strong evidence there.
And it's, a lot of it's firsthand accounts, though. It's eyewitness accounts, which in a court of law are extremely shaky.
I know, but it still shows some serious,
And the argument is, where's the video? Where's the photos? So a lot of video that's been captured and the photos, and they're just grainy. People aren't rolling with gear like what we have.
I'm just saying from the aspect of nobody's even made a verbal report and tried to embellish a story in Hawaii. That kind of gives credence to the fact that maybe people that are making the claims and reports aren't making them up. Especially when they, stand by their stories.
Some of them are total horseshit. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
But
let me tell you what.
Police officers and in the case of this Minerva Monster in 1978, this family didn't want the entire national news coming down to their, to Paris Township. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we'll get into that.
I think with a lot of genuine stories, that is kind of the feeling is people, A, never really asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
B, never asked for the, aftermath that would come.
Right.
And then, where did I go with A, B there? C, what do they do going forward?
Yeah.
Because, there's kind of like, some people get marked for life by, becoming, we talked about Woodrow Derenberger last week.
Yeah.
Or not last week, but in the last episode with the Mothman.
Yeah.
Didn't turn out so well for him.
No, Derenberger had a rough life. And that reminds me of this Caton family, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And all those folks, I feel for them, definitely. They had a lot of courage to come out and talk about this stuff. And even giving interviews even recently on a documentary that we'll talk about that too.
Okay.
And so the origins of the Grassman name come from a couple different things that we found.
Yeah.
The origin of the Grassman is that he ate tall grasses or had been seen eating wheat from farmers' fields.
And creating nests
And then
out of tall grass.
the nest is the second one where they've seen these weird shelters that are made from these. So they're like weaving
thatch igloo.
Yeah, they're like these.
Like a mud
They're
hut.
like yurts. They're like grass yurts. They're circular in shape.
Like a really flat beach ball.
Yeah, there's
They're not.
That's how they're described.
The photo we saw.
Yeah,
It didn't look overly large as far as height wise. You wouldn't think that
there was somebody standing next to it. I could get a better idea of how big that thing is.
I'm estimating here.
There's no scale.
Yeah.
So there's nothing in the photo other than a bunch of trees and grass, and I don't know how far that tree is away or how big that diameter of that tree is.
Well, let's just even say
it
maybe
looks small to me in the photo.
What
it's
if,
like there ain't no 7-8 foot tall creature hanging out in that thing.
Let's say it this way: Sasquatch isn't that fancy. All he wants is a little
well,
dirt.
Of course.
Basically, it's like a giant sleeping bag for Sasquatch.
There you go. Maybe it's just super insulated, and that's all it is. He's not going to stand up in it. Maybe he's just getting in that little.
Well, let's jump
opening.
species here to turtles. What do they do in the wintertime? They crawl up these, slides that they have in the sides of the water. They just
Are you admitting that Sasquatch is a real species of animal?
I mean, I don't know for certain, but if he is, that's his sleeping bag. Is that little burrow? I'm going to say that because. I'll have to ask you: Are there a lot of sightings, or have there been a lot of sightings with multiple Sasquatch at once?
Yeah.
So okay.
Smaller ones, which they perceived as children.
So maybe the Sasquatch sleeping bag / hut domicile is, maybe they let's say it in multiple ways. Maybe he was single, or she, or they kind of spread out until they start making their, so because I would think you would see more than one at a spot.
They seem to be in more here in Ohio, in Washington State, California. A lot of those sightings are single Bigfoot. There's
one at a time.
Here in Ohio, I guess a lot of the sightings are multiple women, children, big males, all kinds of different colors too: gray, white, brown, blackish brown. So a lot of different, 7 to 10 foot tall, 15 to 20 inch footprints, pigeon-toed, which I thought was kind of weird, flat-footed.
Pigeon-toed, huh? 350
to 800 pounds, growls, barks, breathes heavily, screams loud, like a woman's screech at night.
I've listened to some of the vocal recordings.
Wide shoulders, bipedal, hair covering the face.
Yeah.
So like literally hair right down to the eyebrows. And then coming all the way up to the lips. So it's hard to kind of see what they look like underneath all that hair.
You ever seen a special services operator wearing a ghillie suit?
Yeah.
I mean...
And people fake a lot of Bigfoot videos with those ghillie suits.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
But let's say for the Sasquatch's integumentary system, that wrath of hair not only is unkempt and wild looking, but also serves as a very nice... way to break itself up visually in the medium of the forest.
Right.
It just stops moving because I'm going to say this. I mean, I've seen bear in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And the animals can be right in front of you.
Yeah, they blend right in.
It's not Nat Geo. It's not framed in a picture. So there again, that description of its overall appearance and size, yeah, it's big. But I mean, again, if you're in a forest, I mean, have you been to big forests too? I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to get scale when you're looking out into the in betweens of those trees.
Yeah, like Yosemite, you go to some of those kind of places.
Yeah. Even in Wayne National Forest.
Yeah.
That's a big forest. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, huge. So let's get into the Minerva Monster.
Okay.
So one of our sources for the Minerva Monster is shout out to Seth Breedlove and Small Town Monsters. They make these awesome documentaries about cryptids, and a lot of it's regional here to Ohio. Seth is from Wadsworth. So another Ohio guy putting out awesome content. Would love what the guys from Small Town Monsters are doing. Would love to connect with you guys. So we checked out his Minerva Monster Bigfoot of Ohio documentary. Really well done. Great stuff. And he interviews a ton of people from this 1978, which really started in 1978 with this Caton family.
Yeah, it kicked it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you want to intro this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob. Take it.
I was, again,
this is good.
These are kind of, again, I've heard the terms and names and, never really dug in quite as deep as this. So, I was sitting there scratching my head a few times like, this is pretty wild. But
it's pretty wild. There's this Barbara Mudrick Galloway. She's from the Akron Beacon Journal. And she reported on this story in the Akron newspaper. Yeah. And
Deputy Sheriff Jim Shannon.
Take it away.
On August 21st, 1978, there was a police report in Paris Township. And the reporting officer received a call to contact the complainant at her residence regarding a large animal in her yard. And so this is Mrs. Caton. And she told the officer for the past month they had been plagued with some type of hairy beast around their residence. Okay, let's stop there. So you've been plagued by it. What do you do from there if you're the sheriff? You're getting this first now. What are you thinking? Oh, a hairy beast. So are there bear around that time?
Yeah, so
1978?
He's a sheriff, which means he's responsible for the whole county.
Right.
So he's not necessarily, in the town of Minerva all the time, which this Caton family got to know the Sheriff Jim
Shannon.
Sheriff Jim Shannon. And over time, because of these Bigfoot sightings, they got to know this guy because he was coming out to the property and Jim Shannon had written up a police report. Yeah. And you can look that up. His report is public knowledge. Yeah. And
he said he got there and she was waiting by the door distressed.
Yep.
And what was it? A very strong smell of ammonia. Yep. So we're getting a foul odor already. And
which is common with the Ohio Bigfoot, kind of like the skunk ape down in Florida and Louisiana. And
I think Sasquatch in general is known throughout lore to smell. Again, man, look at that hair.
Yep.
It's something to behold in so many ways. But yeah, so they find some fur on a nail. They send it off to Malone University in Canton. And
there was no DNA back then. No, there was no way to look at the genetic code or
different animal of investigating too at that time.
There's a professor that kind of looked into it, but I'm not really sure what he was able to.
How much stuff do you think they just didn't realize was possible evidence?
Oh, I'm sure. If that's
because if they couldn't process it in the right way or interpret it or get it to a lab to figure it out.
Oh yeah.
But in the police report, it's Evelyn Caton and How Caton. Is it Howie?
Yeah. So these family members are listed on the How Caton.
I want to say it's How or Howie, but basically they thought that it was some hermit in the woods messing with them because you got to remember they just moved to this place apparently, and through all this, trying to figure out was it some miser in the woods coming down to lay claim to maybe some land that he thought was his, or just trying to run him off. They became good friends with the sheriff, Jim Shannon.
They were having a party, right? They were having a get together. It's like a weekend get together.
Okay.
And Vicky Keck is his sister. Scott Patterson, Linda Jones, Becky Manley was his sister. So they had a get together, and they were sitting there eating dinner, and they saw something outside, and then eventually this thing is like throwing stones at the window. And so I think it escalated a little bit. And then it was knocking on trees. And they saw, they described it as about 6 to 7 foot tall. The one that they had seen that night. I believe that they've seen very larger sizes and smaller sizes. But this was one particular Sasquatch here.
And what if that is, say from a vantage point of you're looking out the house, seeing this thing, just trying to, again, estimate in my head of when I look at something out through that vantage point, when you think it's tall, you think you're overshooting, but a lot of times you're still under.
Yeah.
So even at that, I'm thinking of the 6 to 7 foot tall reference there, maybe. Because I know they've been reported as tall as 10 feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was in.
We're talking about the variation of the Squatch. Okay. Anyhow.
Yeah. So
back to what you were saying.
They reported this to the police, and he wrote up the report. The whole 9 yards, investigated it, found some hair, and then these occurrences persisted with this family for a while, and they had a lot of different things, and eventually it got really crazy, where it just kept getting more and more daring, getting closer to the house.
Right, kind of investigating.
Yeah.
Testing them.
And one of the first times, I believe somebody came out with a shotgun, and it just didn't seem to mind. It just was kind of like, it just walked away. And so they all just kind of watched this thing walk away.
It's got to make.
And then
it
came back. It came back and started throwing rocks at the windows. And further down the line a little bit, one of the Caton family members recalls him and his, I think it was maybe a brother or cousin and some friends, and they were walking down this ravine by this stream or body of water, and they just thought it was some dude, because by this time it was all in the papers, because this was written up in police reports. So the newspapers got a hold of this story, AP gets a hold of this story, and so they had people probably prank calling him and trying to get a glimpse of this creature in their yard or property or around adjacent to their property. So they just thought some dude was messing around in a suit. And so they ran up on this thing and reportedly jumped on it.
Wow.
And all 5 of them jumped on it, and it just shook them off as if you had your 2 little nieces and nephews were jumping on you, 5 of your nieces and nephews, and you just threw them off you, and you guys were playing around wrestling. And so from that point, it got pretty, that creature,
this just kept occurring.
Started getting a bit more aggressive. And then one night their German Shepherd, they came out, and the German Shepherd was just going off. He was barking like crazy, and they came out, and the next morning or whenever it was, and the dog was dead. It was pulled out of its collar, and its neck was broken. So something killed their dog. I mean, again, could have been some crazy dude pretending to be Bigfoot. Who really knows? But it seems
like a stretch to go that far with a prank.
And I don't know if it's because they jumped on this thing's back and it came back for revenge. Who the heck knows? But I
mean, they see it a lot. And I mean, it occurs over a pretty small time period. But
grandchildren saw this, where they would see this thing and they would run in the house screaming, just terrified. I mean, the Caton family's friends were out on the front porch, and these people would just hear these noises, and so it's kind of like looking for attention, with the stones and the rocks and.
But again, to what end?
It's curious. It's
just
curious.
To see.
They're seeing a family get together, and maybe they're drinking beers and eating food. Maybe they're making a bunch of food, and that thing got curious.
Yeah, leading up to the August 21st sighting, the wife of the family, Mrs. Caton, said she believed the creature's appearances were due to her husband, Herbert. That's the first time I think I've seen mention of his name. Cutting down the thick brush next to the pit at strip mine.
Yeah.
And that he had also dumped some garbage around for the raccoons.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this a stretch. Do you think this led up to it? Do you think they were like, hey, we live here. We don't appreciate this. We're just making we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because I guess that's the first mention of something that they think might have set this whole process in motion.
Right.
And I mean, if it's a strip mine, how
Ron
deep is
Schaffner,
that? Yeah.
He's the guy that interviewed.
Yes.
And he logs a lot of these accounts too, Ron Schaffner.
Yeah.
And
super deep.
And he talks about and I think Ron Schaffner also or I think he also this Mrs. Ackerman okay, that's what you were talking about with the strip mine.
Yeah.
So that's and then September 9th, Jim Rostetter interviewed Henry Colt, who lived about 5 miles east of Minerva on US 30, and he was walking through some woods by his house, and we caught a glimpse of some unknown furry animal.
Right.
And the animal was squatting next to a tree. So this wasn't too far away.
Right.
You know, a few miles away. So, you know, there's other people that were seeing this thing. It's not just the Caton family.
Right.
And you know, there are a lot of accounts that, you know, we don't really have time to go over, but just to give everybody an idea, it's not just this family that's out here, you know, trying to become famous or making things up. There are other people, very respectable. And also the sheriff, he smelled the ammonia odor and thought that was weird.
Right.
That it was lingering for so long that this odor just hung. It just never, and that's one
kind of make you sit there and ponder a little bit.
Yeah. So, and I, you know, there's articles that interviews that Jim Shannon has done through the years where, you know, he kind of dials back a little bit his claims, but, you know, Seth Breedlove got him to sit down in this Minerva Monster documentary.
Oh, really?
And Jim Shannon is in that documentary. It is definitely worth checking out if you guys
I need to watch that.
haven't seen that. Yeah, it's really good. I accidentally rented it twice on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I want to add to what you're saying that because I've got a little bit of extra on that from another report for the Beacon Journal, but these are just some of the kind of incidences that were occurring, and this was going over a period of several weeks that people were spotting this. And like you said, it wasn't just an isolated family. It was multiple different witnesses to this, but the sightings were making the front page news. So do you think that, again, like you said, people are going out not offering it up some food, but they're going out with guns or, you know, maybe even cameras?
What this journalist talks about is, you know, you got all these people that are just going up there up to no good, and causing trouble, and it's kind of a dangerous situation. You got people running around the woods with guns, other people trying to find the Bigfoot to become friends with him. Some people are trying to kill it. It's a safety concern probably for the sheriff. He probably didn't know what to do when all this hit. You know, the AP starts reporting on it. It's like, you know, the Mothman story. It just grows and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and gains all this attention.
Well, things loose. Okay, how to put this? I don't know how to put it in whatever situation, but sometimes some people are more adept at, again, being able to tell the truth or being able to come forward with whatever story or account or interaction that they had. And, you know, almost like anything, time gives people a way to reflect on it. Maybe some people spoke up early and wish they never said anything. Right. Maybe some people, though, and you'll see this, they want to talk about it after a while because either they know it's something that everybody should know about, or they just feel like it's been long enough, or they've digested it, or whatever.
Yeah. So as
these keep going, that land keeps shifting. You keep hearing more and more about this. And I think it's interesting when the journalists or the authors go back.
Yeah.
And it always sounds kind of dumb, but why are you going to re-interview someone? But even from the Catons, they never recanted their accounts.
They're just in this documentary. Still talking about it. And well, I'm from what I've read, Seth really did a good job of trying to get them to talk about this. I think it was probably pretty difficult, from what I understand, to get them to talk about this.
Because what did we say earlier? Most people didn't want this to happen.
No.
Don't really want to deal with, the transition through it.
Yeah.
And then the aftermath afterwards, too.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's really interesting.
So that's the Minerva Monster, Bub. pretty cool stuff. It's surface level. I mean, seriously, check out the Minerva Monster. Look into it yourself. A lot of interesting stuff out there on it. And the next one, different region of Ohio. This is more Urbana, Bellefontaine kind of area, which again is hilly, very hilly. The tallest elevation in Ohio is in Bellefontaine, so that's the largest
tallest elevation in all of Ohio.
Yeah, is in Bellefontaine in this one area. Me and my dad actually went up there. It's pretty cool. You can see everything.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
and it's right around Mad River.
Oh yeah, I mean I know where it's. I didn't know it was that tall.
So a lot of woods again.
Oh yeah.
This Cedar Bog was officially Ohio's first nature preserve, 1942. Okay, and
I want to say it predated it. It first came into inception in 1941. I think the bog itself.
Okay,
and then the next year, Ohio Historical Society kind of looked at it and said, "Hey, we need to stamp this down as the first nature preserve."
Oh, gotcha. So 1945, there's a sighting. Some kids go missing. And there's a car found?
So I don't know if it was 3 or 4 kids. I don't know if they were going camping. I can't recall a lot of the details of that. That's why it's kind of such a slight reference. But it was something to that report. I couldn't actually find a linking article on that one, so I didn't want to go deep on putting a lot of weight on it. But yeah, so kind of maybe a folklore.
Not a lot out there from the Bogman.
Not on that one.
The Bog Monster.
Not on that one.
Although they did put up a fence.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are they trying to keep something in?
Yeah.
Are they trying to keep people out?
Right.
Or are they trying to keep something in this nature preserve?
Right.
That's been kind of one of the legends around this is they're containing this pen for this bog monster.
I mean, this is 1942.
Yeah.
I mean, this is predating, the previous Minerva Monster by 30 years or more at certain points. I mean, it's wild to think that it becomes Ohio's first nature preserve in that area.
Mm-hmm.
When again, I'm not trying to knock Urbana, but I didn't know it was that rich of a nature preserve to become one.
This teenage couple,
but to fence it off, the teenage couple, they were just making out backseat of the
Lover's
car.
Lane type situation.
Looked out the back window. And they said it was a tall white Sasquatch.
Okay, another white Sasquatch.
Yeah, sped off. Clothes not even on yet. They went down the road a couple miles, got dressed, and kind of collected themselves. But yeah, they said it definitely was. Yeah, again, about 10 feet away.
Stinking.
You can smell that from 10 feet away.
That's strong.
And I'm sure that's not even the limit of its range.
Yeah.
I think it's got a little bit of distance. Yes, they sped away.
They had to stop to get dressed.
Yeah, man. Could you imagine that? They
took off. They didn't even bother to put their clothes on. They just bolted.
Okay, so here's a comparison. The Mothman story, right? Quick segue. In the Mothman, what did the first real big sighting happen with those 4 teenagers in their car? What did they do? They went right to the police. Right? So there's another kind of like similar instance of like, I mean, who adds that to the details, or who gets that shocked at seeing something that's not that frightening and takes off?
And a lot of kids, teenagers see this kind of stuff because they're out late at night.
That's true.
They're out and about. They're driving.
True.
They're the ones driving the car. Your mom and dad are sitting at home watching Jeopardy. Kids, teenagers, they're out there tearing it up. They're out there boozing and partying and hanging out like we did all through high school.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
And
so they got pretty spooked.
They're going to be out there.
Headed out. But this is one of my favorite ones is when in 1980 in Bellefontaine. We say Bellefontaine, you could pronounce it Bellefontaine, but I think colloquially speaking it's Bellefontaine.
It's Bellefontaine, yeah.
Mad River Mountain. Bellefontaine, there's a local farmer. And he goes outside around 11 p.m. and his dog is barking. He's going out to check on it. Like, what? I don't want to do a recreation of his voice because I don't know what it was, but I want to think it's what tarnation. And he's gone out there to see, what Sparky's doing. And he rounds the corner of his barn and he sees this large, hairy man. Okay, let's just hit the pause button there for 1 second.
Right.
That's not a bear. I mean, I've seen a bear stand upright. Maybe not at 11 p.m.
We used to have
or
black
outside
bears
of a
here
barn.
in Ohio. We don't anymore. I mean, I hear that there's been sightings of, you know what? There is something interesting with Minerva, with the Minerva Monster that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, what?
A lot of these sightings
Flashback.
with Bigfoot are seen with a big cat, a cougar.
What?
With a black cougar.
Come on now.
Or a black panther.
Like the Jungle Book?
So they'll have the Bigfoot, and it's almost like his little pet. Not little, but it's a cougar, essentially. And a lot of people have seen this cougar around the Sasquatch.
I have never heard this before.
So they talk about that in the Minerva Monster documentary.
I've got to watch that
And
now.
they talk about because, you know, I know you and Carlos, he was a guest on our episode 1 of the primary of the main podcast. And you guys had a conversation about black panthers being seen.
I have a friend who says he
States.
saw one in while he was out hunting in West Virginia.
In West Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's reports in Florida, down in the Everglades.
Yeah, and I'll say this: he's his historical background of his line of work, etc. He's a very, very honest and trustworthy guy. I mean, he doesn't need to make stuff up.
And we're not supposed to have bears here anymore. We're not supposed to have mountain lions.
But that's what I'm saying. That's just what we say is supposed to be going on, or from our, biological models. That's what I was looking up today. Was I wanted to know. I've heard so many different articles about. Oh, we didn't know this species of gorilla existed for X amount of decades or years.
Yeah, the mountain gorilla, the silverback. They didn't know.
But there was another species of orangutan that no one had seen.
Or bonobos too. They didn't even know bonobos were.
This happens a lot, though.
Yeah, yeah.
It seems like it happens. I'll say a lot because it happens more than just once in a lifetime, or at least there's enough historically that I can draw from that. It seems like it's more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to run the real numbers on that. But, I mean, it seems like, okay, now take that and couple it with if you are a Sasquatch and you're, that big of a bipedal creature, let's say you've got to have some intellect.
Yeah. So
it's not stupid. I mean, we can look at chimpanzees and all kinds of different apes and orangutans. They're very smart. Some use tools now.
Oh, yeah.
They very much know how to learn. But again, it has so much strength to the story when I think of this man talk about the fact that he saw this large hairy man. Okay, we'll go from there. Creature gets startled, runs off, and first bit of evidence leaves behind massive 16-inch footprints. It's a pretty big foot. Yeah, we've got some people today rocking some big feet, but I mean, that's not very common back then in 1980 in Bellefontaine.
Yeah.
And the other part that cracked me up was his comment of the odor of Bigfoot was, quote, Limburger cheese on a hot muffler.
That's amazing.
That's just visually stunning.
Hold on, Limburger cheese on a hot muffler.
Limburger cheese on a hot muffler.
We're going to have to test that theory. I really want to know what that smells like.
I don't want to know.
It can't be good.
It's got to have some serious damaging effects of putting that on a burger afterwards.
Also, 16-inch footprints that were recorded.
Yeah.
With this one.
Yeah.
The odor, 16-inch footprints, and the area was searched.
Right.
4 deputies went out there and didn't find anything.
You think this was just like, hey, we got 4 guys sitting around and somebody said they saw Sasquatch, who wants to go?
Yeah.
And everybody jumped in? Or was it that serious of an event that they were like, hey, we should really look into this? Just throwing out.
I mean, they're just doing their job.
That's what I'm thinking.
They get a report, they got to go investigate it, whether it's Bigfoot, a UFO, or somebody's robbing them.
But they didn't find anything.
Nope, didn't find anything. So nearby, the previous Tuesday, I guess, nearby Union County, creature was observed walking around a woods, kind of striding down this rural road. And this farmer observed this. This farmer was in his field. He observed this creature, and it was described as being, again, 7 to 8 feet tall, long hair covering its body.
Yeah.
And there's a mammal research in Lima, Ohio, who visited the site. So they had some scientists that were apparently coming down here, coming out there, and so they don't really know what evidence was collected or if they found any. and they took 3 plaster casts from the Union County farm.
Now these have 2 dimensions on it instead of just one. So
right, measuring 16 inches long and 4 inches wide. Okay, now the stride of this thing was 40 inches based on the location of the prints. So it had a 40-inch stride
and 4 toes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the pigeon toed of the Grassman. There was like 3 claws in one of the the Yeti is known for having like a 3 claw, almost like a foot that has this 3 claws on its foot instead of 5 toes and a standard foot. It's got this weird kind of claw foot.
I'm trying to wrap my head around why that would make sense.
Who knows?
Because
it doesn't
just like
seem logical.
Having our thumbs, those big toes. I mean, better balance. Maybe I'm hypothesizing too much here. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it's Sasquatch. It doesn't need 5 toes, buddy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and up and down the Mad River in Bell Fountain, apparently this being is kind of traveling up and down.
Using that waterway.
Again. And they said in that area, Sasquatch sightings started in 1811. And there's a 1924, there's some miners in a gorge. And I'm sorry, that's the 1811. That's really when the Bigfoot sightings in America kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
In Washington State near Mount St. Helens, to kind of just give a reference point for other places back in the 1800s are also having sightings. So you have Ohio, you have Washington State, Oregon, Northern California. And
it's just a prevalent theme, and it's trying to nail down that, maybe we didn't have the name for it in 1811, but they were still seeing this creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And we're definitely...
Bigfoot itself wasn't coined until...
Okay, let's go to 40s. Before there's Bigfoot. Let's go before there's Ohio Grassman. Let's go before there's Minerva. Let's go before the Cedar Bogman. Let's go to... We have to name this thing. And you see this thing. What are you going to call it? Just try to drum up something. What would you call that thing? You just saw this big, hairy...
I'd call it the... Oh, shit! I mean, I probably wouldn't be able to speak, number one.
That's
It'd probably take me like a day or two to even think about what I would call it.
That's what I'm saying.
Be in shock.
Right.
Because, you say you want to see these things. It's like, oh, I'll see a Bigfoot. That'd be great. But then when you see it, there's fear associated with seeing something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Or even a UFO. So, people love to talk a big game, but when you actually see something like that, it's a different kind of story. People, grown men, these tough hunters are out there hunting, and, they get rocks thrown at them. They're bolting, dude. They're gone. There's a lot of those stories of just people do not want anything to do with something that is so overwhelmingly strange that it's this flight or fight syndrome.
Right.
And not a lot of people fight and kind of go towards it. Some people, there's reports where that guy that was on the Survivor Man Bigfoot, the guy that captured those captured some video footage that I don't know if they're real or not, but it's pretty interesting footage, and enough where Les Stroud actually created.
That's what made him do it?
Survivor Man Bigfoot was this guy. Gosh, why can't I think of this dude's name? It's gonna drive me nuts. But anyways,
we'll track it down.
That's in like Canada.
Now that to me seems like that's got to be just haven for Sasquatch.
And he had good gear too. He had some sort of, I'm not sure if it was a full frame DSLR, but he definitely had, the ability to get pretty tight on whatever he was shooting.
So he got a pretty decent image.
Yeah. And so can you actually just Google that real quick?
Yeah, what do you see here?
I need to know. Just type in Les Stroud Survivor Man Bigfoot and see if we can get the guy's name that he follows along with. he's been all over the place talking about his video that he's captured, and he's been on a bunch of different kind of paranormal shows and stuff like that. We can come back to that if we can't find it. It's all good.
I'm trying to find the name associated with this. Todd Standing?
Todd Standing. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Todd Standing.
Todd Standing, you know, people have kind of given him a rough time. I'd love to meet him in person.
There we go again.
He's really dedicated to what he does. I mean, if you're going backcountry hiking into some of these places that this dude, there's families of Sasquatch that he claims are up here. He brought Les Stroud up into this region, and they camped up there.
Again, and, look at these two guys. What did you just say?
Yeah.
They're catching a lot of crap for this.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of
Todd
pushback.
Standing really does not care. He is fully committed.
When I say Les Stroud,
still researching.
Just from a television standpoint of when I used to watch, I've never watched the Survivor Man Bigfoot episode, but I probably have to put that.
Well,
on
there's a whole
now.
season. There's
Don't
like
tell me
10
things
episodes.
like that.
Yeah, you haven't seen that?
I'm gonna go home and watch all that tonight.
Yeah, he was on Joe Rogan probably about 3-4 years ago when he was making this show, and Rogan was making fun of him. It was kind of giving Les Stroud a hard time about believing in Bigfoot.
Dude, that's crazy. Though.
I felt bad for him. I was like, oh, go easy on Les
Stroud.
Well, he had an experience in Alaska.
So
and, you know, he's out in the back country all the time. And Les Stroud had an experience. He didn't see anything, but he heard these really loud noises and something shaking his tent.
He's really out there. He really knows nature. Like,
he
films that whole setup himself when he's out there.
So that got him curious. And
I'll
so
bet.
he hooked up with this Todd Standing guy, and this is in like Alberta, Canada, and the Canadian Rockies.
Okay.
And they're going deep, dude. And not many people can really hang like the areas that Todd Standing goes to. Only someone like Les Stroud's going to be able to hang and go on that trip to go up there and shoot this
Qualified to go on it.
Yeah. So do you really have a giant dude in this huge costume that's going up into the Canadian Rockies just to fake a video? Maybe. I don't know. But it seems...
I think Les Stroud had enough viewership. He didn't really need to kick it up by, if he wanted to make career suicide by hitting the Sasquatch bomb. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think he was thinking that. I think...
No, he wants to know.
He's coming from an honest perspective there in that case. And wants to actually find out what's going on here. And he must have had enough corroborating evidence of his own whether or not he ever saw anything.
Yeah.
To give him... And again, he spent so much time outdoors in so many different areas and climates, and you kind of get a sixth or even seventh sense when you are out in the woods.
We got to get Les Stroud to Ohio. Let's go camp out with Les Stroud in Salt Fork.
If you bring his harmonica, you bring your harmonica.
Dude,
I'll bring my guitar.
Player.
I know. I'll try to keep up.
Yeah, he's jammed with some pretty big bands.
He's such a nice guy, and just think you'd never go hungry.
Les Stroud,
you're a champion.
Come to the Strange Road, please.
I think
come to Ohio.
He probably knows how to get to the Strange Road.
Oh yeah, he's got it built-in navigation.
Well,
so last subject here, Bub.
It's definitely not a Les Stroud multi-series season on any platform, but
no.
The Loveland Frogman.
The Loveland Frogman, ladies and gentlemen. Loveland, Ohio is a pretty cool little town. I actually have some friends that live in that area, and it's the Little Miami River, and that's where sightings, if you want to call that, stories. I'm going to call them stories. How about that? Now, the Native American lore seems more legit with this. Some of the older accounts of the people called
Twightwee.
The Twightwee were, or otherwise known as the Miami people.
Yep.
And they were up and down the Miami, Big Miami, Little Miami.
Yep.
So here in Ohio, we're in a big giant river valley, and there's so many different streams and rivers, and they kind of all connect and then eventually come into either the Scioto River, and then eventually everything drains down into the Ohio River.
Yeah.
And so a lot of navigating these river systems, but in this particular area, the Loveland frog is a humanoid amphibian, sometimes reptilian looking maybe.
Yeah.
Walks bipedally, upright again, on two legs.
That's got to freak you out.
It's some sort of man-frog hybrid, and it's said to range between 3 to 5 feet tall. It's a little guy.
For a frog?
Well, for a cryptid, Sorry, I guess I should.
I
That's
mean,
a good point.
We're going from Sasquatch
How
to
about
the
this?
Loveland
How about
Frog.
this? Compared
Cut him
to
some slack. He's like Danny DeVito next to that thing.
Compared to a human.
Sorry, I love you, Danny DeVito.
Danny
That's no
DeVito,
knock
we
against
really
you.
do love you.
You're the best. That's so funny. You're like, he's a little guy. I'm like, he's a big frog.
Well, huge for a frog.
He's a frog man.
Little for a cryptid. A lot of these cryptids that I've been into and looked into are generally big, whether it's like the dog man, Bigfoot, Mothman's even kind of a large creature.
I just had a thought that's blowing my mind. Can I share this with you?
Please do.
Because you're saying it's a little cryptid.
Yeah.
So just bring me very quickly. I'll go through this. I watched a show on Perspective one time, zooming out at the universe, the galaxies, how small the Earth looks, yada yada. Zooming back in and zooming into a droplet of water and watching that whole universe. What if there are microscopic cryptids? I'm not even joking. I mean, so Bigfoot's just a big cryptid.
Yeah.
The Mothman also happens to be a very big,
What about the orang pandek from Indonesia?
Right,
that's
but what
like
about
a 2 foot tall.
And again, this is not really cryptids, but just lore of like fairies, what have you, etc.
Yeah, fairy reports in Ireland.
So what if there are microscopic cryptids?
We'll never know unless you got a microscope and you're looking for them.
Sorry, I had to do that, but that really stopped.
Highly unlikely, Bub. Highly unlikely.
We don't know this for certain yet. But anyhow.
I love where your mind's going.
Right? But the Twightwee tribe, they definitely had a cryptid, or at least thought they did, because they used to, warn the French explorers, right?
Yeah.
About a river demon called the Shanahook.
Yep. Talked about the Shanahook.
Great name.
And it basically guarded the riverbanks.
Yeah.
And it would chase people away, whoever stumbled into its territory. So, they're telling these explorers, stay away from this. Stay away from this area. And these stories passed down for generations through the tribe. And a lot of those things that happen are in the modern day Loveland, Ohio. So a lot of those stories come from Loveland, that land that is now Loveland. And then the first modern day sighting, May 1955.
Now, do you want to call it a story?
Let's call this a story.
Because I think this is
First modern day story, May 1955. A businessman in Loveland describes seeing a gathering of 3 strange beings on the bank of the Little Miami River. Again, 3 to 4 foot tall, covered in leathery skin, bipedal, standing erect, having the head and shape of a frog, webbed hands, webbed feet, and totally hairless. Okay? And there's not much written about that account. There's not a whole lot. I believe it was in some newspapers. Some people had reported on it. But it's not like there was a string of incidents like the Mothman or the Minerva Monster where you have people all over town seeing this thing.
Yeah. But I want to add to that story because I think I told you, and I'm sorry, I probably didn't put it in the right place in the notes, but in that instance with the businessman, it's reports saying around 3:30 in the morning, he sees three figures along the side of the road. And this is the frogman you just described. They were
right
3 to 4 feet tall, stood erect on their hind legs, no hair but leathery skin.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, their hands and feet were webbed. Head was the shape and had faces of frogs. In this version, though, the man pulled his car to the side of the road and watched the group for about 3 minutes. He said he watched the creatures converse. So the frogmen are now talking to each other, and then one held a wand, or sometimes described as a metal cylinder, above its head and fired a spray of sparks, startling the man into finally leaving the scene. The other 2 versions just have the creatures being spotted on a bridge and the other under a bridge. That's 2. This is like one is not like the others.
They're like wizard frogmen.
Who souped that one up?
That's somebody that was really into D&D or something like that. I don't know. I mean,
okay, I'm always going from...
It's a really cool story. Like some dude in 1955 making that up.
It's a cool story, weird. But I'm wondering again, if you're going to make up a story or if this is a true story. That's where it kind of gets me caught in the middle.
Right.
One, if this is a made-up story, how did it survive this long, I get it. Oh,
yeah.
Ray so-and-so or whoever he was.
Yeah.
But 2, it's not that believable if the wand account goes into it. It's not that believable.
Right.
So I don't know where that report came from.
They're like performing some magic ritual down by the river. It's weird, man. It's really, really.
It just seems like the most unlikely creature.
Yeah.
To become a cryptid, and not even have really any that I know of other than the wand story. Cool powers,
right?
But there are some other more reputable accounts too. Well, we'll say reputable. You want to lead us down this rabbit hole a little bit?
There's 1972. The story goes that this police officer, Ray Shockey, spotted something strange on the Riverside Drive in Kemper Road. It's kind of near this old boot factory.
Yeah.
And he saw something scurry across the road. And over the years...
And where were they near, though?
They were near the Little Miami River.
So we got
near
Squatch
Loveland
there. Maybe
Yep.
Maybe it's the cryptid.
Well, this is a smaller kind of animal that's scurrying across over this curb embankment, over this curb, and so and then Shockey tells this other police officer, Mark Matthews, that he saw something. Now, the story over the years goes that Matthews didn't believe him, but had agreed that he felt like he did see something.
Yeah, he believed him. He believed the sincerity with which Shockey told him the story. He maybe didn't necessarily believe of what Shockey was saying he saw.
Right. So a couple weeks later, Matthews is over by the boot factory, same area.
Hanging out by the same spot.
And he sees what he thinks is a dead animal on the side of the road. And it stands up on 2 legs, resembles a frog or lizard. Matthews draws his pistol and shoots the creature. Now, when I was looking into this, one account said that he shot the creature, put it in his trunk, and drove it back to Shockey and said, "Hey, was this what you saw?" And he agreed, "Yes, that's the creature that I saw." Then
seems kind of unbelievable.
And another account was that he just shot at the creature, and it slumped over and jumped over the embankment, okay? So then I dug a little deeper. I found this email interview from 2001 with one of these police officers, this Matthew or Shockey. I can't remember which one it was, but this skeptic had interviewed these guys, and basically Matthews was like, none of that ever happened. Okay, this is in 2001. This sighting happened in the 70s, and he basically said that he'd never said that he had shot the animal, put it in his trunk. None of that stuff was true, that it was actually probably an iguana that somebody just set free. Somebody had a pet, and they let it go.
Could have been.
And so these stories get sensationalized. It's like telephone. I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to add a little bit. You're going to take away something. You're going to sensationalize it in some way. And so a lot of, these legends and myths, they come out of, something like that. Somebody's pet. Somebody let their pet go. And next thing you know, it's the frogman's among us again. And it's total horseshit, So that's just a kind of a good lesson in not believing everything that's out there, everything that's on the internet.
True.
And a lot of these cryptid stories are complete crap, but I think some of them are real in the sense that they were a real experience for that person that saw this creature, animal, cryptid, whatever you want to call it. They believe that what they saw was real. So whether or not it was a bear or a Sasquatch, they believed it was something that was out of the ordinary, extraordinary, and they truly believe it and can pass, lie detector tests. What they really saw, we might not ever know.
Right.
But when you start getting a mass amount of people, whether it's the Mothman, whether it's the Minerva Monster, and some of these stories where you have the whole town seeing this stuff, that's where those stories like UFO stuff, like the Phoenix Lights, where there's these massive,
that's a big one.
The UFO sightings in Washington, D.C., where they're seeing him above the White House, over the Capitol building. Exactly. The L.A. UFO battle, the Battle of L.A.,
Battle of Los Angeles,
and just hundreds.
They actually shot at all those.
Right. So it's those kind of stories are most interested to me. Not necessarily Joe Schmo at his farm, where he just saw something, peek behind a tree or something. Where you have mass sightings, lots and lots of people are reporting very similar things.
Right.
The odors, that's kind of one thing that stands out, is because they're not just seeing it. There's something else. There's other senses involved that are very, very similar to that are kind of weaving through these other accounts. So there's something to that.
There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. And
myself, if I would, again, I'm trying to theorize what I said to you earlier is, you see this thing, what do you call it? And what I'm trying to figure out there is, how does your mind develop the ability to digest what it's seeing and interpret it? And again, okay, let's say you see a bear standing on its legs and you misinterpret it as Sasquatch. I could buy that. But if you misinterpret a bear standing on its legs that takes off at a full sprint upright, I'm not buying that.
Right.
That's a really, really, really lost circus bear out in the Canadian wilderness.
Yeah.
Because,
and some big...
That's not the way they run.
They run up the side of really steep hills, like that Todd Standing video.
Right.
That's the one that a lot of these doctors and scientists will actually say, now that one's weird.
Because of the physics of how it's moving.
That thing ran up the side of a mountain, dude, in the matter of seconds and was gone.
Right.
I mean, that'd be like, you got
can't
a little,
fake that
you got
with
a
somebody
little bit
in a
of a
Bigfoot
grade,
costume.
You're going to slow down massively. But this thing just took a couple steps and it was up and out of there. And so that video is interesting. If you haven't seen that one from Todd Standing, his YouTube channel, check that out.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say earlier with
Todd Standing. You want to come on the Strange Road? We would love to have you too, brother.
Everybody.
Come on down, Todd.
I think we wouldn't be able to
We'll
handle
teleconference
the amount of mind-blowing. Again, if he got Les Stroud to make an entire documentary type, series on it, I think.
Yeah.
But that's also the part of the attraction to it is, not personally, again, even if I had never seen a bear in my life or never seen a rattlesnake or whatever, and I, you witness those things, you kind of remember it. But even if I didn't, I've seen that on a television. I can kind of equate that.
Yeah.
But to, either have your own experience of seeing like a Sasquatch. Again, I think you're right when you say it would be probably just like when I saw a bear. I really didn't want to, because you kind of have this real quick reality check of going, I'm a snack to that thing.
Now, I'll tell you what. Summer 2018, when me and Stone got back from Switzerland, we got a call to come out to the White Buffalo Ranch out here in near Amesville, Ohio, to go do a shoot for these white buffalo people. And this guy needed some help, and we drove out there, and we drove in this rainstorm, and it was nuts, man. I mean, thunder, lightning, and it's just coming down. And on the way out there, there's big trees in the middle of the road, and there's a trooper out there, and he's like, hey, if you got 4-wheel drive, you can go around it. Probably should have turned around. That was probably like the sign to...
Wasn't a good sign.
Bro, you need to, turn yourself around and get out of here.
Right.
But nope, just took the go-ahead route right around the old tree there, continued on our journey, and we take a ride on this gravel road, kind of backcountry Ohio hill road. And probably was driving maybe 80 yards on that road and just goosh, hit 4 feet of water. My Pathfinder's just drudging through this stretch of, and the water's coming over top of my vehicle, and it's just coming over the top, and the headlights go out. And Stone looks at me and just, don't stop. Because I said, what do I do? What do I do? He goes, don't stop. Keep driving. So I just gunned it. Boom. We made it through. We got up on this little bridge. And so it was like high ground, right? But the bridge, the water's just gushing underneath this bridge. And we get up there. I'm like, okay, good. We look ahead of us, and the whole road is a river. Whole road's a river. So I'm like, oh, this is not good. We have gear in the truck. We were planning on going out there and shooting the next day. So we're going to spend the night and then shoot the next day. And man, we got to the point where the water started coming over the bridge, and I thought my Pathfinder was going to get swept away. We were making a plan to put the gear, all the cameras, lenses, everything you had over our heads and trudge out of there. And there were cows drowning in the field, dude. There were cows going, they're like crying out for help. And we're like, little buddy, we can't help you. Yeah, it was weird. And they were like stuck in this field. And
maybe they were just stuck in really deep mud.
But that night, we ended up, Stone ended up getting his hammock out and stringing it across the bridge. And I went and got my hammock, and we strung him across the bridge. And we spent the night out on that bridge in our hammocks because we were trapped. We were stuck. And the water just kept rising up over top of the bridge. And finally, it ended up going down, luckily. Once we realized that it was going down,
so
we put up our hammocks and got
You stayed out on the bridge?
Yeah, we slept on the bridge in our hammocks. So we literally strung them from the beams of the bridge and then looped them in between. So we were dangling above water.
That's going to become like an overnight sensation. People are going to start hammocking on bridges across the U.S.
Don't do that because you'll get hit by a car. Nobody was driving on this road. But that night, I just kept feeling like, man, we're being something is weird. Like I felt
an energy?
Not an energy, just more like being watched. There was these fireflies. I don't know if anybody's ever seen. They're not like the fireflies I grew up with. They blink really fast. It's not a yellow light. It's more like a bright white light. And there were like 1 million of these things all up in the trees, and they were putting on a show for us. They were syncing up, and it was wild. So we're in our hammocks laying, watching all these fireflies, and I'm like hearing noises, and I'm just like getting this really strange feeling. So I've never seen a Bigfoot. I would never claim to have, but there is times in the woods where you are in a situation where maybe your imagination's going wild, and you have fear, and your mind just kind of plays tricks on you. So there probably was nothing at all in the woods, but it was kind of a cool
in that setting
feeling.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah.
In that setting, with the time of day, you get into the night and it's dark and there's shadows, and you start getting into that light play, and especially depending on what the moon and the stars do. I mean, it could be bright out to where that could make it kind of change that cast over time.
Yep.
It plays tricks on your eyes.
Yep, it absolutely
does.
In
the darkness, you're looking at something, you finally get 2 inches away from it and you can read it or see it.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if that's almost like it's just a natural. I would have been freaked out to be in the middle of that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, number one, I thought my car was going to get swept away by a river.
There's a lot of levels of fear going on there. This
little brook, normally you go across that, and we were a mile away from the buffalo ranch, so we were there, dude.
That's very ominous.
Day, when the water went down, we drove 2 minutes to the buffalo ranch. So we were there. We show up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and Cynthia's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? How did you get in?" Because they know that we're dumb. We should have never went that night. That area floods. Like most of those ravines in Ohio, they just not to be driving around when it's raining like that, and we're dummies. So we went ahead, and so they were just so baffled that we were there that morning, and they're like, "Where'd you guys come from?" We're like, "Oh, we just spent the night on the bridge down there." And they're like, "What? Hold on, you spent the night on the bridge?" It's like, "Yeah, we had our hammocks, and we just
what else are you gonna
spent
do?"
the night." And it was definitely an adventure, strange time, but ending with that, it's again sightings. People's eyewitness accounts. People see weird things at night. It's a fear element to it. There's, but I will say some of these sightings are pretty credible to me. What do you think, Bub?
I mean,
we can wrap this up. I mean,
I was not
kind of last feelings
I was not
after
a big
this
Sasquatch proponent for a long time.
When we were kids, we always you had a song in high school, about Bigfoot when we were driving through Tennessee that you had made up. When we were driving to...
I liked it as a topic of conversation and kind of a playing thought of daydreaming about it. But I have to say, honestly, I never entertained that
it was real.
It was.
You thought it was just.
It's just like anything else. You start to hear too many occurrences, and I know that doesn't equate to truth or, real data. But I mean, it's got me leaning. I mean,
now that you've dug into it a little bit,
I'm closer to believing that Sasquatch is real in a big way.
As a kid, I knew about Bigfoot. I was obsessed with. That was kind of one of the first, like, ghost Bigfoot. If you're into weird stuff like I am, you kind of get introduced to really simple stuff: Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs. Boom. That's kind of the first three that when you dip your toes into. So, I had heard of the Patterson-Gimlin film and. A lot of the famous sightings that were, maybe done on Unsolved Mysteries or one of those kind of early paranormal shows. And, but it wasn't until Monster Quest when, the guy that we talked about earlier, Don Keating, he was on Monster Quest on the History Channel, and they were analyzing his white Bigfoot video that he had captured. It's really tough. I watched it and it's who knows? It's rough footage.
Again, it's one of those, I think I'm going to have to, I hate to put it this way, but I might have to have my own encounter to get me to 100%. I mean, other than proof, other than, again, a Sasquatch wandering in and staying, or
Ohio Bigfoot Conference, August 2020. We might have our opportunity.
That sounds like a great shot.
Yeah.
I would do that.
I'll come out and live stream that.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. It'd be a good one for the Strange Crew. Go out there and help out the Ohio Bigfoot Conference.
Just camp out and look for Bigfoot.
Yeah, they go on hikes too. They go on hunts. So
I'd be down
there's
for
a
that.
culture here.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is I've heard about all these stories around everywhere else. It's just like mounds and earthworks for me.
Right.
I went to Chichen Itza, the Temple of Kukulkan, Chaco Canyon, all these ancient sites, and had never been to and didn't realize that we had our own amazing monuments and ruins here in Ohio.
Right.
And had barely been to this. The Shrum Mound was the only one that was kind of the first one that I went to back in like 2011.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing. You have all these other Bigfoot legends.
So you're saying dig in here.
I had no clue about the Ohio Grassman
Minerva
until
Monster.
2006
Cedar
when Monster Quest had Mr. Keating on. And so from that point, I kind of started learning a little bit more, but it's cool. We have all of this weird stuff merging into these Ohio River valleys, and I appreciate it so much more.
Absolutely.
As I get older,
Absolutely.
kind of the weird, Ohio is just a strange, kind of weird place. And I mean, that's about all I got for this one, man.
I agree.
It was a really fun one. The research
cool
part of it has been exciting.
Didn't know there was this many versions of Sasquatch and Grassman
all the different
and Bog
names
Monster
and trying to weed through the different variations, if you will, of these creatures, beings, whatever you want to call them.
Again, if anybody has their own sighting story, anecdote, if you know any kind of intel on Sasquatch or where to find them, good spots, let us know. Get
a hold of us. Keep following us. Keep looking out for us on Crowdcast at The Strange Road. Watch out for us on Instagram at The Strange Road across all of our platforms. I'm going to be, looking out for you guys, and we appreciate any followers, listeners. If you guys are digging what we're doing,
let us know.
We really appreciate it. And this was a fun one, Bub.
We got more.
Yeah,
we got
absolutely.
more to come.
Like I said, stay tuned, and we'll keep them coming. Thanks, guys. This was the Strange Road Detours with Mikey and Bub. Signing off.
See you guys.
Peace.
Something that I need to say.